Hey there, and welcome to the second episode of the inkED Education Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rob Collins, and I'm really glad you're here. We made it past the second episode. Today, I'm incredibly excited to introduce you to my friend, Morgan Seeley. She's a person I deeply admire and a fellow Kentucky educator. Morgan teaches at Painted Stone Elementary School in Shelby County, Kentucky. And let me tell you, she's the kind of teacher who makes classrooms feel like home and learning feel like empowerment. She's a former Kentucky Innovative Teacher Fellow, a deeper learning teacher navigator with OVEC, and now she serves on the board of the Ohio Valley Education Foundation. Beyond the titles, beyond the 13 years of experience, the thing that makes Morgan so special is how she helps students build agency, how they build self-awareness and self-knowledge, and most of all, how they build community in her classroom. Her work is rooted in community, it's full of heart, and it's deeply impactful for the kids she serves and the families that send them to her school. So let's get ready for what I hope is an inspiring conversation full of practical insights and dive in. Okay, cool. So Morgan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. And it feels like it's been, oh my goodness, like a year since we've last seen each other. So I'm happy to catch up.
At like one point in time at the Shelby County something or other, and I was like, oh, it's Rob. It was really fun to see you for that fleeting moment.
Right. But now we get to dig into a whole conversation. So I'm excited. And again, thank you so much for being here and ready to dig into your stories. So we'll start off. First off, it is officially your first day of summer. How is that going for you?
Oh, it's been wonderful. I slept in, my children slept in, and then, sit on the front porch with your cat watching the sunrise was a part of my morning, and gardening. And now I'm hanging out with you. So it's been pretty great.
Oh, hey, we will count it as a successful first day. So thank you. So Morgan, the point of this podcast is to really spill the ink on the untold stories of the teachers who are in the trenches doing really meaningful student-centered work. And I think a large part of that story starts with the teacher as a learner. So I'm really interested first in what was the best learning experience that you can recall as a learner yourself?
Wow. Well, I like to think of myself as always learning. So sometimes these examples are most recent ones, and sometimes they're, your ancient stories from high school. But I really think one of my most favorite moments of learning was when I got into plants. This has nothing to do with education. This has to do with like my intrinsic passion of plants and getting to learn about plants and how they heal, and then finally practicing it on myself after trial and error and getting it right. It's really rewarding. And I found that my inquiry that led me through that whole journey and all of the skill sets that I needed got me so involved with the learning process that it kind of was much more meaningful versus something that is, forced upon you, something you have to learn how to do. Like, for instance, today I'm learning how to get a new real ID in the state of Kentucky. Well, that's not a lot of fun. That's not, it's not the most interesting subject. So when you think about learning and just kind of driving yourself, I think passion is the center and the forefront of it. And that's what makes all humans unique and interesting in the first place. I would say that learning about plants has really been my favorite new exciting adventure.
That's awesome. I'm just hearing in that, like, the importance of your autonomy as a learner and your own passion. And I'm trying to think of how that lives in our classrooms and how we can support that in our classrooms.
I'll tell you one of my favorite
thoughts.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts. I mean, I could probably talk for hours. But one of my favorite memories was when I started figuring out student agency. And, with that idea of being a learner and always learning, teachers are always learning. They're always trying to figure out better, strategies, methods, and philosophies and things like that. And I stumbled upon competency-based education, and this concept of student agency really hit home for me to be able to really go into the direction of pedagogy that I feel is correct for the current learner. And it just kind of clicked. And so there was this time in my teaching. It was post COVID where I really was like, I turned to the students. I was looking for adults that might have an expertise in this field, but there were no answers. So I turned to the students and I said, hey guys, this is the thing I'm learning about. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is something worth learning about? Do you think this is something worth investing in for students and for you? It was an overwhelming yes by a bunch of 10-year-olds. And so with that, I'm a full believer that kids are capable of anything that you put in front of them as long as you help them through it. And so I explained to them what student agency was as if they were a teacher sitting in the classroom with me. And I said, help me. How would I make this happen for you? What do you need? And through just an organic discussion, my students came up with agency norms. One of them is know yourself. And it is important for you to have that ability to make a good academic decision or a good personal one, like learning plants or whatever decision. You have to know yourself to know what your need is. And that was powerful to me. And that really spoke to a student's ability to reflect and how that can sometimes be an adult driven process. But when you let students own their reflection, it becomes a meaningful step forward. So then they pulled out of their pockets the concept of integrity and using integrity to drive your choices and understanding, when you've made a poor choice or a good choice and how that impacts your next steps. And then they got into a lot of fun concepts with power of the choice. My students, they get
Mm.
into a lot of different choices in the classroom. I'm a full believer of we don't provide one learning pathway, we provide as many as you can. And sometimes you provide student opinions. Like talking to the humans that are in the room with you is a powerful resource. So getting to have choice in what they learn helps them believe in their choices. So if you have one person saying everyone's going to do this one thing, they don't have the opportunity to even try to believe in their own choices. They're being forced through a pathway of learning. But I've just, discovered when you let students make choices, they tend to make good ones, and deep ones. And then before you know it, this whole learning experience is now like a team building experience for the entire school year. It's really so much fun when you open up that
Yeah.
possibility of what a human brain can do. But yeah, they were student created norms. Know yourself, third eye focus, integrity equals success, and power in the choice. And they reflect on them daily. It's really cool.
So that's incredible. And just thinking of which we should do all the time, but thinking of the child as a human being that has to grow into themselves and make decisions and choose their lives, the power of giving them not only centering their integrity in making good choices, how powerful is that as a child knowing, oh, I'm trusted to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's kudos to you for making that happen in elementary school.
Yeah,
Could you
it's my
remind me what
10-year-old.
grade you're teaching?
They're fourth grade, 10-year-olds. And
Yeah.
I said earlier, my son's in my classroom, and so there were days where I got to see the other side of these choices. Sometimes kids they give you their best selves usually in the classroom, and they go home to their safe space. So then I got to have my own son come home to his safe space and talk to me about school, and he was excited about choices. He
Mm,
was eager to come back the next day because he knew that he was going to have a say in what happens. But with that concept of integrity, like it was not a waste of time. It was a valued bit of time for him and his peers, and it was fun.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about the notion of more folks buying into the autonomy and choice that students get, especially now we're facing a crisis of disengagement. And it's not
Yeah.
hard to figure out why when you're removing that autonomy and that choice and that passion. So the work that you do on student agency really is incredible. So I do want to ask a question about if there's a particular project that really has that integrity, or excuse me, that student agency infused throughout it. Could you tell us a bit about that project and the successes, the challenges, and how others might do similar work in their classrooms?
Yes, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's really hard to pick just one. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I witnessed this year with passion projects in my classroom. And I'm going to preface this whole storytelling with I had an adult volunteer in my class that helped me achieve a lot of what you're going to hear about. And I think it just speaks to, it is important to build relationships with students, but let's not forget those parents. Sometimes you really can tap into quite a human being when you open up your world to them and your students' world. So basically, every Friday in my classroom was Passion Project Friday. And so, with that, when students complete their classroom assignments and responsibilities, they get to dive into only their passion project with whatever that was. And so I would provide one-on-one time with students in a filtered system that I've created so that they are given adequate academic opportunities within that passion to grow. And one of my students' moms got to learn a little bit about passion projects and wanted to come check it out and kind of fell in love with Passion Project Friday. And through that, she began to use her expertise in the world and reached out to the community members. So Rob, this year we got to interview NASA. We got to get a hold of a veterinarian. One of my students wrote she wrote an opinion piece on why she should get a golden doodle. She just thought golden doodles were cute, and those fourth grade girls, they want to come in, I want a project about a puppy. And I'm like, okay, that's really awesome, but like what can we learn? So we look at our standards and we look at, internal, external structures are big in fourth grade. Also, just reading informational text is also super important, and opinion writing. So we built this whole focus around learning about golden doodles, how their bodies function, how they're different than other dogs and breeds. And then this parent volunteer got in touch with a local veterinarian, and we got to do a FaceTime with him, and she got to interview him on like care for this dog and like what's unique about a golden doodle versus other breeds that make them a benefit, or maybe like what risks might you run into with older years, things like that. So after this interview, she wrote an opinion piece with all that information, took it to her parents, and her parents bought her a puppy. So I don't know if you can get any better than that. So now she has a passion project wrapped around this puppy named Sissy, who's a golden doodle. And I know. I want to say it was Halloween was the day that she got Sissy. So this was even at the beginning of the year.
Oh, what a
Um,
great day.
it was an awesome day. And so then the rest of the year, she
Yeah.
just watched her grow and develop. And so she would add to her project as she changed behaviors or did new things, and was just super awesome to get to hang out with her dog all year. And, in the classroom, it made her excited and got her to go. So then we also had a student who got into marine biology, and every year at Painted Stone, we do a shark dissection. So, with my connection with iLead, I learned about a student. Again, this is through my parent volunteer knew this girl's parents, and she's a student of iLead, and she's looking at going to the University of Miami in the fall because she's graduating early and she's going to go into marine biology. So, one of my students who is
That's awesome.
interested in marine.
Before you go on,
Oh, yeah.
could you tell us what iLead is, just really quickly for
Oh,
folks that might not know?
it is a program that is offered to students to find alternative pathways towards graduation, especially with specific fields of study. So for instance, this student, she was interested in marine biology. So through these grants and programs, she has these opportunities that otherwise she wouldn't be able to take part in. One of them was going to a summer camp where she went to Miami University and got to go through a few courses and classes and kind of experience what that would be like. And then she had other courses and classes that she took while she was going to school, and now she's graduating. I got to watch her walk. That was really neat. And she is going to get a degree at Miami University, and she had the chance to come teach my students about that pathway and opportunity in Shelby County. She was there to talk about her love of the ocean as well, but I think my student was really interested in, oh my gosh, how did you do this? Like, what choices and decisions did you make? When did you start? Those kinds of questions started to come up. So I got really excited because my student saw an opportunity that a student who's not much older than her took, and she sees that vision now. And so that was really exciting. So there's another exciting story. I mean, there's so many projects. I could go
Yeah.
on and on. But I think the concept of giving them something real, having something from the community to reach out to. I had a student who loved Golden Corral. This is also so random, but she was like, I love Golden Corral. And I said, that's awesome. Food is amazing. What do you love about it? So we started to research, and then she learned about the history of Golden Corral. And then she learned about this
Hmm.
franchise opportunity. And so there's, how kids love like a story. So she found this story on YouTube about this guy who started off as a busboy and his journey towards becoming a franchise owner. And then so she was like, "What is a franchise? What is that?" And so then we got on this whole like economics like trip, and she got to share that with her class and share what she learned about, hey, when you work at a restaurant, guess what, there's more than just the jobs you see, there's jobs that you don't see too. And every single one of these passion projects ends up in like an hour long moment with these kids, and I cannot tell you, they listen to each other better than they ever listen to me. If I stand up and teach text features, internal, external, whatever it is, earth structures, it does not matter. These kids, when a student stands up to share their learning, they're engaged listeners. Not only are they quiet and respectful, they're asking questions, they're getting excited. A lot of the kids have developed like, oh, I don't know, like I guess it's a legacy maybe of every passion project presentation. They want to have an experience. So like they give like a lesson or an activity or something that the audience can like do with them in that learning realm. Um, we had,
Mm,
oh God, I don't know. I could tell you about, there was a meme one, the history of memes and what the future of communication is going to look like.
okay.
There was, I'm not kidding, it was so cool. And this girl thought, she was like, you know what? I really think it's going to continue as GIFs, but they're going to add music to GIFs. And then eventually like three-dimensional, kind of like a Leia in Star Wars, like what is that? A hologram?
Sure, yeah.
I mean,
Hologram. Yeah.
a hologram GIF with dancing and all the whole
That's
thing. I was like,
incredible.
I think maybe you all are right about this. I don't know. I mean, I would have never gotten to those places with students had I not let them choose to go there. I would have never done that. I mean,
For
I
sure.
could, there were so many projects. I haven't even told you half of them.
Right. Uh,
But yeah,
so
you get what I'm
one thing
saying.
I'm hearing, I do, I really do, and these sound incredible. One thing I'm hearing you saying, and a point of not really contention, but a thing that folks are really often have questions about is standards alignment and rigorous standards attainment with something like a passion project. Because often we hear folks are like, oh, that's just fluff that you do at the end. It's like a dessert project. And that is not at all what I'm hearing your students experiencing. So could you talk a little bit about that standards alignment and attainment in this framework of student agency and choice?
Yeah, so it really comes from the philosophy of competency-based education and building a competency. My brain just kind of clicked in that world and worked that way. So when you think about dedicating time to something like a passion project, I do have to have that balance of rigor, academic, traditional learning versus student choice. There's never, I don't believe, and I think maybe other educators are learning after going through, the past 10 years of everybody trying new things, is that sometimes you just need a toolbox of all of it. There are some days where direct instruction is needed, and that's what we get. There are some days when, the student choice is more important because that, dives deeper with engagement. But the power of a passion project through that is giving your student that time to listen to their vision and then facilitate that pathway. So once I start to facilitate their pathway, that's when we do this thing called building your standards. So, for the puppy, when a little girl sits down and goes, I want to learn about puppies, it's adorable. Of course you do. They're cute. But how do we make it academic? Let's look at what you're responsible for as a fourth grader. Some of those things are super easy. You're looking at reading articles, looking at text features, understanding structures, things like that. But then you also have your scientific standards that can dive into that moment. You start to see this transference become more of a need instead of this thing that you talk about. You start to see the student really needing to access those skill sets in their brain so that they can get into this thing they care about. It's fun to see how thirsty they become for standards. I have a video I'll show you one day. It's not for today, but it is funny.
Yeah.
I sit down with my students and I give them an actual standard continuum. And this is like, something that a teacher would look at and, look at a standard to dissect it and scaffold your pathway through I can
Hmm.
statements. I had my students do it. And by the end of the video, one of my former students says, Miss Seeley, I just want to have these posted everywhere and just come in and grab three and then get started on a project. And I thought that was the most interesting thing I've ever heard because I was just asking her to annotate the standard in front of her the way we do in class, but she was like, no, I need like two of these and then I
Hmm.
can do this thing. And I don't know how to harness that all the time. I feel like I need, at one point I asked my principal, can I have another wall in my room? Like, I need all of these like ways to map out your thinking. You've seen my thinking wall. It's like I need 10 of those sometimes.
Yeah,
Um,
like a
but
hexagonal
yes.
decagon room or something.
Oh, I need a plan. I need a building planner right away. But yeah, something like that would be perfect for my ideal classroom because once I gave them that, like it's like learning how to cook. Once you know how to do it, you're like, oh, I'm gonna try all these new things, and I don't know, it's just really cool. I'll have to show you that video one day. It's a pretty sweet
Yeah.
one.
Oh,
Yeah,
please
but I
do.
think
That sounds wonderful.
I think to answer your question and like to sum it back up is that you have to trust that students can see standards. It shouldn't be a mystery to them what they're responsible for. And when you give them that understanding, they can hang, they can do it. You just got to let them, let them get there and trust that they'll get there. It doesn't have to be a mystery for them. And it's kind of cool what they can do when they know what they're supposed to do.
Absolutely. And I keep thinking of the importance and power of metacognition for students.
Mhm,
So the idea that we give them the opportunity to understand what, how, and why they're learning so
mhm.
that they think of themselves as learners and then find themselves a path in, the work that we have ahead of us in our classrooms. That's incredible. So another thing, just from context that I know of in Shelby County has a really robust system of defenses of learning. And I'm hearing some amazing projects that your students are developing through these passion projects. How do those come to bear in defenses of learning? And are those something that you do in your classroom?
Well, we do little like mini defenses all year long, kind of. But when you think about that, like
Mm-hmm.
traditional defensive learning, I will say that our fifth grade, I get to do that with our fifth grade every year. And it is without a doubt every single one of my students who have been in a passion project that comes up. We make it a point to reflect not only on the project itself, but the learning that has been made. And then also that profile of a graduate becomes really important. Something that I think a lot of my kids, as we dove into so many, like I said, the frequency of projects this year was, I've never seen it before. I don't know what happened to me. Basically, it was so fast. It was the turnover was so quick. There was one day, I couldn't do lesson plans the last 2 weeks of school because every day were kids going, I have to present. I have to present. Can you get these worksheets done? I need this. I need this. I have to present. And I'm like, okay. So my last 2 weeks were just a bunch of defenses of kids just wanting to do it. We had a really neat one was a cryptid, they researched cryptids and it was creepy. And I had to be like, hey, we can't be creepy. We got to be like, we're 10. And so they said, well, we have a
For sure.
standard. Yeah, we have a standard that talks about character traits, and cryptids kind of have character traits. And so then they took their lesson and taught about famous Kentucky cryptids. They also discussed how our new poet laureate is a cryptid author. She writes about cryptids. Of the
Oh, I didn't know
Poet
that.
laureate
That's
of
fascinating.
Kentucky. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also
Yeah.
the parent volunteer reached out to her. She was willing to talk to my students, but school ended. So we're trying to figure something out. Anyway,
Oh,
the kids all created their
I
own
see.
brand new cryptids based on character traits that they think were important and fun. So then we get this whole class experience of these fun, new, silly, creative characters that are all coming apart and alive into these stories that they're just bursting at the seams with creative excitement. It was so fun. It was so fun. I loved it.
Absolutely. Well, so thank you for sharing, and I have no doubt that uh, when your students in fifth grade are doing that capstone defense or transitional defense, that they have a rich, um, oh, what's the word? A rich, almost like filmography to pull from
Yeah.
their projects, right?
I
So
do.
that's
I try to take
wonderful. Oh,
pictures.
yeah,
Yeah, all that stuff. They use all the evidence, the slides, the pictures, the work they do. It's nice to see them so proud of their choices and what they've done.
indeed. I'm excited. So I hope when folks listen to this episode, they really dig into the power of giving students that choice, that autonomy, and of making those intentional connections to standards related to the passions of students. I think that's so powerful and so needed for engagement for students and for, preparing them to continue to be learners throughout the rest of their lives. One thing I do want to ask you, because you've shared so many amazing projects, which kudos to you for having them. You've recently transitioned a little bit, or not transitioned, you really added to your plate of being a board member on the Ohio Valley Educational Foundation. And I think that's, from what you've told me, it seems like incredible work. So I'm interested, would you tell us what OVEF is and that mission and that work?
Well, it's really they're there to kind of help along with OVEC, but the Ohio Valley Educational Foundation is a board that really I've grown to love. I'm learning a lot. We support a lot of different neat avenues with education. One of the things that's coming up really soon is our Dart to Head Start. It's a 5K, and this money is going to go to help towards pre-K services. And I'm really excited to just kind of learn a lot about the world of funding and how we make things happen. Something else that was really exciting this year is we got to send some high school students to a technology competition, and they did pretty great. And just getting to see opportunities come across the pathway of students in a different way, I think is important. Another thing that I love about this experience is connecting with the community. I think it really has taught me that a community wants to be there. They want to help. They want to be involved with their education system. And to have pathways and ways where they can get involved and do that, I think is so vital and important, especially as we move forward into the next few years that are a little unknown in the world of funding and how things are going to kind of land. It's nice to have that community support. And I
Mm-hmm.
think OVEF is doing a great job with bridging that opportunity for students and communities.
Well, kudos to you for not only being a phenomenal teacher and building community in your classroom to bring content and connections to bear, but also and being willing to step into more of an advocacy role. That's incredibly needed for teachers, I think, to be in those spaces. And there's no doubt that you're doing amazing work there too. So thank you very much. I did forget a question at the top, so I want to end with this question, have it be our last one. Given that it's summer, reflecting back on 2024, 2025, what was your top teaching moment this year?
I already have an easy answer for you. It was at the last 2 weeks of school. I mentioned it a little bit, but I kind of had a cathartic moment. It was the last 2 weeks of school. We had just finished KSA testing. And I have to do a little bit of a brag, but my students rocked it out on their map tests as well. So we were just really excited and have energy was high. And they really
Mm-hmm.
needed one of those like days where maybe we're outside playing a lot, or maybe we do like a read aloud or something like that. And they asked to do passion projects. I literally offered them, hey, you want to go outside and play and da da da, let's go play a game or go to the garden. We have an outdoor garden at Painted Stone. Let's go to the garden and hang out. And they said, we have work to do. Can we get on these passion projects? We only got like 2 weeks left. And I was like, are you serious? So I sat down and I just let them start. And for about 10 minutes, I kind of had to hold my hand in my heart because that was their choice. I mean, they started helping each other, asking questions, giving feedback. It was amazing. So that was it.
Yeah. I mean, if that doesn't illustrate the power of that passion, that agency, that autonomy, I don't know what does. And kudos to you for building the culture to make that happen. Truly, like that speaks volumes of you as an educator and a teacher. Listen, Morgan, I have taken enough of your time on the first day of summer, but this has been beautiful reconnecting with you. So we'll have to catch up later, but thank you so much for taking time and sharing with us.
Of course. It was great to talk to you,
Cool.
Rob.
Yeah, you too.
All right. I'll see you later.
And there you have it, folks. Thanks so much to Morgan Seeley for joining us for this conversation. I hope in hearing her story you've learned that it really does matter that we provide the conditions for our students to become agents of their own learning. First, that we give them the information that they understand what they're learning and how it applies. But next, that they have a choice in that learning, in showing and demonstrating that they have in fact mastered the learning and the knowledge, the skills and dispositions, but also that they can apply that learning in their cultural and community context. Morgan's work is joyful, it's exciting, and it gives me hope for the future that our students, when given the stage to carve their own paths, really can build something that's brighter and better and more alive. Thank you so much for hanging on with us and listening to the second episode of the inkED podcast. Episode 3 will be coming up soon. I appreciate you folks and hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks and have a good one.